Hi, how you doing? Welcome to a Rainbow Dash retrospective. Now, it's no secret that I like Rainbow Dash. I mean, even looking at my name and profile picture, it's not very hard to see which pony I was inspired by. Skeptics will ask, how can you make an entire video talking about one character from a pony show for little girls? But trust me, they'd be surprised. You see, for anyone new to My Little Pony who isn't too into the actual fandom but still watches the show, Rainbow Dash is quite a divisive character. Some really like her and some really don't, and of course they both have really good reasons. Over the course of the show, Rainbow's character doesn't change as much as other ponies, and she remains pretty similar to her season 1 self. If anything, her character traits might even be slightly worse in later seasons than in the first few. To be honest, any of the main characters in My Little Pony could have their own retrospective, so in the future I may even do another retrospective on a pony I find interesting, like Fluttershy for instance. Possibly my second favourite pony in the show, of course with number 1 being...
the one and only!
Anywho, onto the actual video. Let's start with a little history lesson on the Dash. So for anyone who doesn't know, most ponies in Generation 4, at least the main ones in earlier seasons, are at least loosely inspired by ponies from Generation 1 to 3.5, and Rainbow is no different. Conceptually, her character is based off a Generation 1 pony called Firefly, as in her personality. Obviously her design changed quite a lot from Firefly. Here's a concept render of what she'd look like if they didn't have to deviate from the original design. I can't confirm the credibility of this, but apparently Lauren Faust originally wanted to use unchanged Generation 1 ponies, but Hasbro didn't have the rights to them, so they had to alter the design and names, but still could base their personalities off Generation 1 ponies, and this is how we got the Rainbow Dash we saw in Season 1. In fact, her actual design and name is based off a fashionista pony from Generation 3 and 3.5, so she's basically two older Generation ponies mixed together. At the start of Season 1, and for the rest of the show's run, Rainbow Dash would be voiced by Ashley Ball, for both normal vocal work and musical numbers, which isn't the case for all characters, like Twilight or Rarity, who have separate dialogue and singing voice actors. The voice done for her in Season 1 and possibly Season 2 as well is quite different to later seasons. This is because all the casts were new to the show and were still trying to find their characters, so they didn't have the voice perfected. So all pony voices are slightly different in Season 1 to later seasons. However, I think it's most noticeable with Ashley's characters, Applejack and Rainbow Dash, sounding quite similar in the first season, but in later seasons being very different from each other. Here's an example of Dashie from Season 1 compared to Season 4.
Rain blow dry. No, don't thank me. You're quite welcome. How could you possibly know that before me? I'm the series' biggest fan.
Enough background talk though. What's she actually like? Well, in Season 1, Rainbow Dash is presented as a competitive Pegasus who loves flying and the Wonderbolts. However, she's willing to sacrifice winning or being the best in order to stay loyal to her friends, and while yes, she can be very confident and assertive to the point where it can be considered mean, she can also show empathy. Like this example from Season 2, where she changes up her attitude when talking to Fluttershy after realising that her being loud and militaristic isn't going to help Fluttershy the way it might hurt.
I just can't risk that sort of humiliation again. Suck it up, Fluttershy! This is no time for... I mean, confidence or no confidence, I'm gonna need every Pegasus to break the record, including you!
Another example of what makes her a good character is in the Season 4 episode Rainbow Falls, where at the end she comes to the conclusion that even though she loves winning, she loves her friends
way more!
This is an example of her defying expectation and putting her friends before her own desire to be the best. In my opinion, this version of Rainbow Dash is the best. Season 1 to 4, maybe 5. After that, even I can admit, her character gets slightly less likeable. But I'll get into that later. For now we're talking about the good bit. Although not every early episode with Dashie is good. The mysterious Mare Do Well, for instance, showcases how Dashie can be unlikable and gives someone like me, who normally glazes her, a window into how people who don't like her see her all the time. As in this episode, she's pretty much completely selfishly motivated to be better than Mare Do Well, and be liked by everyone, without actually thinking about everyone, and putting ponies in danger by gloating. Fortunately, in the early seasons, these episodes are few and far between, and generally she's a likeable character. I personally was drawn to her when I first watched the show because of her whole awesome aspect. And I'm also a fan of planes in real life, and Rainbow Dash wanting to be in the Wonderbolts, which are the My Little Pony version of the Red Arrows, it just made me more likely to like her. Now that I'm older and hopefully wiser, maybe not, but anyway, nowadays I generally like all the other ponies more, and while Dashie is still my favourite, I would have to say that the others are not nearly as far behind her. Originally it was believed that this adult Pegasus that we see in a flashback in Games Ponies Play was her dad, but it's revealed that he is actually her dashing mentor, in the words of the trading card game by Enterplay, and is named Rainbow Blaze. But yeah, until Season 7 the general consensus was that this was her dad. However, in the season 7 episode Parental Guidance, we get introduced to Dashi's actual parents, and they are revealed to be overly supportive of their daughter and inadvertently embarrass her often, causing them to have a delicate relationship. Her parents are called Bo Hothoof and Windy Whistles. Season 1 to 4 Rainbow Dash is a great character to root for as she has a very unique presence, being confident, courageous, and awesome, if I may. And when she has screen time, it's always fun seeing how she reacts to situations. Rainbow Dash has quite a large library of memes, her most famous being possibly the most famous meme of the entire show.
It needs to be about 20% cooler.
In fact, I've seen this meme referenced completely outside of its original context, by people who don't even know that it's from My Little Pony. Most show memes stay within the fandom, but this particular one is just so iconic that it ascended meme rank. That gives me a nice segue into how I believe, despite Twilight being the most main character we have in My Little Pony, Rainbow Dash is arguably more iconic and sort of the icon of My Little Pony, for better or for worse. Most videos online, for instance, made by people who don't watch the show or aren't in the community properly will have Rainbow Dash in the thumbnail, and again, people who don't watch the show genuinely seems to know Rainbow Dash's name. I've seen this firsthand from my friends who are not in any way interested in My Little Pony. I think this is mainly due to her design, which really is something to praise. I don't mean to offend anyone who likes Firefly, but I personally think that Rainbow Dash looks much more visually interesting than her, especially when you compare it to Firefly's Gen 4 render. The obvious reason for this is in her name. The rainbow part makes her very eye-catching and interesting to look at. This is what naturally makes companies and people making thumbnails likely to use her, as it'll turn more heads and catch people's eyes better. Throughout the show, Rainbow Dash has some great moments. You guys are probably tired of me showing it, but the Sonic Rainbow scene for me is, and always will be, the coolest scene in the show. What I don't see talked about enough though, is how cool the movie Rainbow scene is. Generally, I dislike the animation style of the movie when compared to the show, but in this particular instance, I think it makes the Rainbow look even more awesome than it already is. Another Dashy moment I always enjoy is the scene where Applejack launches her across Ponyville.
Here I go! Wait! Applejack!
This showcases her comedy side. Despite Pinkie being the funny character, I think it should be acknowledged more that Rainbow Dash is genuinely quite a good comic relief character at times, and has genuinely made me laugh quite a few times. To be fair, this could just be the glaze I was talking about earlier. Basically, her screen time is 50% awesome, 30% comedy, and
20% cooler.
sorry, I couldn't help myself. I think the show balances these qualities quite well, at least to me. She never seems too much one way or the other, like she's never portrayed as too cocky and arrogant to the point where she alienates herself from the audience, at least in the earlier seasons, and on the flip side, she isn't used for comedy to the point where she just becomes goofy comic relief and still can be taken seriously and have awesome moments. Another one of these awesome moments I haven't mentioned yet is when she flies down onto Applejack's old barn and causes a rainbow mushroom cloud. It's not all sunshine and rainbows with Rainbow Dash. There's plenty of people who dislike her, but I generally attribute this to the later seasons. You've heard me talking about how earlier seasons portray Dashy better than the later ones, but in what way? Well, as mentioned earlier, in the first few seasons, Dashy has her cocky, self-centered aspect, but this is balanced out with an ability to show empathy and be more human. Ironically, because she's a pony, which makes her genuinely likeable. However, later on, mainly season 5+, that empathetic aspect becomes less prominent and we generally see the cocky and comedic side a lot more, which alienates her more and makes the audience relate a lot less to her. As a hypothetical example, let's say Twilight and Rarity are talking about something. In season 2, if Rainbow appeared, I'd be happy and excited to see what she'd have to add to the conversation and scene. However, in season 7 or something, if I saw her appear, you could pretty much predict that she'd say something about how she wouldn't be in the same problem they're in, and not really offer much help unprompted. That could be a bit of an exaggeration. She isn't represented as a villain or anything, she still helps her friends, but not in the same way. Not with the same motivation, at least it doesn't come across like that. I think the best way to phrase it is that in the early seasons, Rainbow Dash's character is genuinely interesting and unpredictable. Yes, we know her general character traits and personality, however she can deviate from that and be, for example, empathetic. Like another example from the same Season 2 episode from earlier, where at the end, after they succeed in their goal, the leader of the Wonderbolts, Spitfire, commends Rainbow Dash on her success. However, Rainbow Dash takes everyone's focus away from her and recognises Fluttershy as the pony who made the whole thing possible. Which is not what we'd imagine her to do, as we know her as a pony who wants to be the best. However here, where she's being recognised as the best, she gives up the attention to acknowledge the pony who truly deserved the praise, Fluttershy. I believe that in Seasons 6, 7, 8, 9, Rainbow wouldn't do this. At least not without some kind of indicating from another pony. In this case, it'd be Twilight, who was there, maybe nudging her or something. Basically, later season Dashie becomes completely predictable. Nothing more than just a confident Pegasus who likes the Wonderbolts. Which yeah, she was that before, but she had depth, she had empathy, and she could defy the audience's expectations of her. We couldn't have a Rainbow Dash retrospective without mentioning the Wonderbolts. From Season 1 Episode 1, it's established that Dashie's overarching goal for the series is to become a Wonderbolt, and this pretty naturally comes to fruition from Season 1 to Season 6, in the episode Newbie Dash, where she officially becomes a Wonderbolt. In the start of Season 1, we get a sense of the Wonderbolts being an almost untouchable goal, but then in moments like just after the Rain Boom, we realise that Rainbow's goal may not be as untouchable as we first thought. There are multiple other meetings with the Wonderbolts after that, and in each of them we see that Dashie is more closely acquainted with them. Like being able to talk casually to Spitfire, which she couldn't dream of doing at the start of Season 1. In Season 3 she gets accepted into Wonderbolts Academy, then shortly after she becomes a Wonderbolts Reserve, and then finally in Season 6 she becomes an actual Wonderbolt. And this is genuinely quite a good example of long-term storytelling over series, since it focuses on so many different characters yet can still have each of their own ambitions and goals built over seasons. And we naturally get a feeling of pride when Rainbow finally achieves the goal we've seen her working on for the whole series up to this point. Even people who aren't too fond of her probably felt some sort of congratulatory feeling. Maybe. I don't know. The only problem with this whole Wonderbolt storyline is that after Season 6 there are still 3 more seasons left, and having achieved her dream, Rainbow Dash doesn't have as clear of a goal for the end of the show. And it contributes to her fall in likability, as there's not really anything to invest us in her character from that point on. I mean, there's the School of Magic. And sure, there are some interesting episodes that take place while she's in the Wonderbolts. There just isn't the same feeling. It's kind of like, why are we here? Again, we just don't have a really clear goal for her character anymore. So while the Wonderbolts arc is really good while it lasts, once it ends, it basically marks a true fall off of her character. Normally after Season 6 is where I drop off on a rewatch, as once my favourite pony kinda becomes boring and predictable, the show just doesn't have the same spark. Again, don't let me paint the picture that the show and character absolutely suck after Seasons 4 to 6. No, it's still perfectly watchable, good I'd even say, but doesn't have the same magic as in earlier seasons. I feel like since this is a Rainbow Dash retrospective, we have to mention her slightly unhealthy relationship with cider. Now, no one actually knows whether the cider in My Little Pony is alcoholic or not, but it seems most likely that it is, as the word cider got censored in other countries in which the show aired. For instance, where I live in the UK, if something is called cider it means it's alcoholic, and I'm pretty sure that the episode didn't air here, but I may be wrong, and let's be honest, you aren't going to get cues like this for apple juice. Now of course there are arguments for the other side, like how in the US and Canada where the show originates from, standard cider is just spiced apple juice, but I still feel like Rainbow Dash's relationship with the drink is slightly unhealthy. It's shown especially in the episode Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000 as a recurring gag how desperate Rainbow Dash is to have a tankard of cider. So yeah, Rainbow Dash is canonically an alcoholic. Not really. Another thing I'd have to mention about Dashie, since this is a retrospective, is her trusty pet tortoise Tank, who we first see in May the Best Pet Win, and from that episode on, Rainbow and Tank have an inseparable bond. Dashie even tried to stop Winter from coming at the weather factory so Tank wouldn't hibernate, because she didn't want to be apart from him for so long. In the episode Applejack's Day Off, Dashie is revealed to have Tank slippers, a cute reference to how much she cares about her pet tortoise. Speaking of that episode, it actually is quite a good example of another aspect of her character, as it's shown that she likes to keep a certain tough, no-nonsense, cool image, so she doesn't want her friends to know that she goes to the spa, especially that the treatment she gets is a gentle pampering, and she tries to play it off to no avail. It's shown in other episodes as well. Rainbow doesn't want to be seen as weak or delicate, and this is an example of a negative character trait done well. It doesn't come off as annoying to watch, yet still shows us that her character has flaws, and there isn't any reason for Dashie to hide the fact that she gets spa treatment as her friends don't really care, and the only pony that she's trying to convince is herself. Ironically, this episode is in season 6, which is where I said that her character had started falling off. However, this is just a testament to how the show never gets bad, or anywhere near it. There are still plenty of good episodes and character moments. Now let's move on to a familiar topic for me. Merchandise. It is a complete retrospective, and I'd say that since the show is made to sell toys, this is an acceptable subject to include in the retrospective. So, as with most ponies, in way of official merchandise, especially in the plush aspect, it's not that great. Now, some products are serviceable. I mean, uncharacteristically for blind bags, their Rainbow Dash doesn't look too bad, and I'd go so far as to say the vinyl figure looks good. However, pretty much everything else is bad, except the 4DE plush, but that literally costs more than a custom commission. I have a theory for why so many of these products look bad, and it isn't simply to do with their actual design or shape, because that's understandably quite hard to make show accurate in a plush or a figure in a factory for an acceptable price for both the manufacturer and customer. So my hypothesis is that it's all about the expression. Let's take a look at this TY plush. So that eye shape is quite common with ponies such as Twilight, Pinky, and Applejack. However, in quite a lot of Dashie's screen time, she has a determined expression with a diagonal line basically halving the size of her eye instead of it being a whole circle. So naturally a plush like this will look less like Dashie if its expression isn't really accurate to her character. Now obviously I know Dashie doesn't always have this expression, but hopefully you still get my point. This expression doesn't look like Rainbow Dash. I feel like if some of the toys had more Rainbow Dash-like expressions, it'd be more easier to actually see them as Rainbow Dash. Because when I look at this, despite the colouring, I still find it hard to actually see this as Dashie. Compared to something like a custom plush, which yeah, they are much more expensive, and arguably yeah, they look a lot more shape-wise like the characters. But the most important thing I think they do is get expressions right, and that, for me, contributes much more to the actual quality of the product. Since this is a retrospective, I should mention how the community generally thinks of the character. Now, I originally had the idea that Rainbow Dash was quite disliked in the fandom due to her, let's just say, elevated self-esteem and ego. However, the longer I've been researching this video, it seems that she's actually generally quite liked, but to be honest, the community is so large I may have only seen certain part of it. But if you go to a convention, I haven't, I'm basing this off pictures, many people cosplay as her, or wear things with her on it, which leads me to believe that she's generally a popular, well-regarded pony, despite her many shortcomings. I can see why people can dislike her, regardless of how many people do or don't, as her large ego and self-esteem problems could make her an annoying character to watch an episode from the perspective of, as you do in the Mysterious Mare do well. Her self-esteem is either too high, to the point where she believes herself almost better than everyone else, or too low, and she has no belief in herself, and can't bring herself to do something, like in Sonic Rainbow where she believes she's going to fail. Now me personally, I quite like this aspect, as it reveals that although Rainbow appears very confident and stoic, she can be as vulnerable as any of us when she starts doubting herself. But yeah, it generally seems that the consensus of the community is that Rainbow Dash is a popular and liked pony, which is not what I originally thought when thinking about this video, but something I'm happy about as a fan of the character myself. In conclusion, despite her shortcomings, I think Rainbow Dash is a great character and an irreplaceable part of the show, from her design to her personality. If you're not a fan of Rainbow Dash, just imagine a show without her. Yeah, bit of a boring place, right? If I was to describe her with one word, it'd have to be awesome. And that's literally her whole point, to be the cool pony. And that on its own would make her a pretty one-dimensional character. However, it gets masterfully balanced with moments like those examples from Sonic Rainbow, showing that she can be both the best at everything and confident, but also get anxiety and self-doubt the same as all of us, and make her more relatable. And the example from Hurricane Fluttershy showcases that she really does care deeply about her friends, and would sacrifice being the best in a heartbeat for them, showcasing why she is the element of loyalty. Something that I haven't mentioned yet somehow, that makes her character even better, is how she's literally the sole reason the main six even met. Her filly Rainbow causing all of the main six to get their cutie marks, and without them, AJ would still be in Manhattan, Twilight wouldn't be Celestia's student, and etc. This all just contributes to her coolness factor. It makes her
20% cooler,
you could say. I'll stop. I mean, even the most religious hater of Rainbow couldn't say that her Sonic Rainbow scene wasn't awesome. I hope you enjoyed this retrospective. It's my first video of this kind, so I hope I did it right. If I'm being honest, I don't properly know what a retrospective is. All I know that it involves looking over something in detail, which is what I tried to do with this video with Rainbow Dash. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, or found it informative. If you did, let me know if you guys want to see me do it again with a different pony. I apologise for the people who wanted ranking episode 3, that's coming next. I just wanted a break from them as they're pretty repetitive to make, and I wanted to make something more fun for me. And what's more fun than a whole video about my favourite pony? If you did enjoy it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And with that, thanks for watching. I've been Monodash, and I'll see you sometime soon.
It needs to be about 20% cooler.